qualification to the WCI tournament. So losing this round was not something they wanted to do. So the pressure was definitely on. Good stuff from W, using that to their advantage, bringing the fight to the enemy, and winning that match.
I mean, we'll get to see W with a probably bigger challenge later on against Biology, but that's probably hit for now for the Group A, as now we're going to be jumping to the Group B and have OPUR, probably the favorite of the tournament, playing against Rejects, the APEC team. This team, I think Elvish said that they're possibly top two, even though they were maybe more likely top three seeds on that APEC tournament. It's gonna be very hard. OPUR is looking very strong, but on top of it, you have to tell that last tournament they played, they didn't even make it to the grand finals. They lost to W in the losers bracket finals. So maybe there is some hope for Rejects, but most of us probably are gonna go with OPUR with this one.
Yeah, also I feel like the big issue for Rejects is they need to win this, and they really, really do want to win this without even going to tiebreaker.
No.
Because even if they go to tiebreaker here, as long as OPUR still wins versus Dopa, they still have no chance. So Rejects
Mm.
wants to win 4-2, 4-1, 4-0 here. We'll see if they are up to the task. OPUR probably has a word in that. So we'll see how the match ends.
Yeah, that's a BO7 OPUR versus Reject. That's the next match of the day. And to introduce that one, we'll get back to the casters and Filch and Daki. Please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Obviously, right back into the swing of things, aren't we? EU versus APAC once again. Are we going to have a similar result? Can APAC maybe find some revenge? Is there a possibility? Look, like I said, Daki, if it's not going to happen in that previous series, I kind of rate Bricked. I'm not necessarily expecting it to happen in this series.
You got to keep the faith high, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I predicted 4-0. Let's go.
Yeah, when you
Reject's
predict
gonna win.
4-0, and then you start going back. Okay, I really, maybe not. I don't think so. It's like you predict with your heart, but then you start like thinking about it, and you're like, man, maybe not, maybe not.
I do want to at least have some degree of credibility when I come onto a broadcast like this, like I want to show my faith. I want to show my APAC pride, right? But I don't want people to like look at this guy, I don't want to look at the Twitch chat and see people going, oh, look, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. He doesn't, blah, blah, this guy sucks, da, da, da. So I do want to have some degree of credibility.
Don't worry,
so, I like to hedge my bets.
So, they're used to Kihan,
Right.
and he doesn't have any credibility left anyways.
Sure, I'll take it.
It's only an improvement. He doesn't even root for German teams, so, it is what it is. But yeah, this is going to be a really hard one because you talked about Bricked being the better team, right, in your opinion. Now, OPUR, in my opinion, 9 out of 10 times is a better team than W. They didn't show that in the last tournament, right? But historically, and just looking at this lineup, they should also be better than W. Because they have a lot of experience here. Multiple tournament winners as well. Just an all-star stacked lineup.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to sort of see how they go in this initial matchup. I think, the issue that I have with Rejects, and especially after having watched them earlier this morning, was that they did start quite slow. And I think in a series like this, when you're up against a team that in theory should come in as the favorites, you don't want to be starting slow. You want to be starting on the right foot. And that's why we kind of had some kind of excitement for Bricked, right? They started with a 2-0. We thought, all right, if it's going to happen, like this is how it's going to happen, right? They're not going to come back from behind. That said, with this Rejects roster, you do, again, have quite a bit of experience when it comes to the 5v5 format. A lot of these players have been involved in that. CJ, Donga, Raspberry, Dark Knight, Madhouse, Xanon, all played in the ANZPL. Cesium and Razor are a little bit newer when it does come to that kind of World of Tanks, but at least they are also, as far as I've been told, I had a bit of a chat with CJ, they've been sort of in and amongst it for a little bit, so they are getting some, some experience, and they've apparently been doing pretty well in their scrims. So we'll see how it goes. You might even recognize Madhouse coming back through from the WGL days. So, you do have a lot of members here that have sort of been around the block, and there is that as far as an advantage is concerned. But just in terms of achievements and in terms of results, the individuals on this roster don't quite have the same that the Bricked individuals do. So that's kind of why I look at the Bricked roster and I say I think they're maybe just a little bit of a stronger team on paper. I think Rejects maybe don't look quite as strong and on paper. And even from the game that I watched earlier today, I didn't quite feel like maybe there was the cohesion there for the Rejects that Brick had. So we'll see how things play out. Maps here for you: Muro, Tundra, Prokhorovka, and Mines being the tiebreaker.
Moro, we just saw it. Normally, it's a 1-1 map, and I think for Rejects, I think in this match it is important that they do find one game um, on Muro. Starting 2-0 on Muro would be a disaster because Tundra really is a 1-1 map after. So if they would lose Muro 2-0, 1-1 on Tundra, 3-1 scoreline into Proco, you really want to have the 1-1 trend going here because it is those kind of maps, right? And they really just need a strong start because OPUR is one of those teams. Describe them as once they get rolling, it's really, really, really hard to stop them. The
Right.
teams that beat them usually, like really in the beginning of the match, get that advantage. Don't let them ever get really into the match and continue that trend themselves. But if you let them win the first 2 rounds, it's a super hard team to stop.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess just to touch on the results from earlier today, I was watching Rejects. They picked Tundra in that matchup as well. They lost 0-2 on Tundra to start the series. So not exactly the greatest of displays from them there. They did end up going 1-1 on Himmelsdorf, so there was at least some sort of input being put forward from Rejects. But they would hopefully have gone back and had a bit of a look at what went wrong on Tundra, because if you're going to pick Tundra as your first pick, go down 0-2, and then pick it again in the next series that you're going to play, you'd like to think that maybe you've made some adaptations or you've made some changes. We didn't get to see them on Muro, though. That was banned in that initial matchup. So see how they go today. I've picked a 4-0 for Rejects. I've got full faith in the boys. You've shown your EU bias as usual, Daki. Unbelievable.
It's crazy.
You have something against APAC? Like, what is it?
No, I have a lot of APAC homies. You used to be one of those as well before you left. Better than my dad in that case whatsoever.
Right.
I'm all aboard the Donger train here, but I vote with my head, not with my heart.
Okay. Yeah, well, look, I mean, 4-0s across the board from yourself and Toxic, 4-1 for Insane. I think that's a pretty scary looking prospect, right? And
bro, if Rejects wins
what you
4-0,
say is true,
I will take you out to dinner. Trust, and I'm paying.
Looking
I'll
forward
fly
to
all
it,
the way
when
to
we eventually
Australia
meet.
and buy you dinner if they win this 4-0.
Do I get to choose the restaurant?
Okay, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. Depends. We'll put a budget on it.
I'll let you take me out for a really nice night if I get to choose the restaurant, is what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm pretty confident about my bet. What do I get if OPUR wins 4-0 though?
I'll give you a crisp high five next time we meet. Which may never even happen. We'll see. But look, let's get on to business. We've got the tank selections for Muro here. IS7 double 277 double triple super conk actually, and then a bat chat to round things out there for a reject.
Yeah, the bat chat to round it out. APAC really loving those bat shots. OPUR double IS7 double bat shot, double S going double E5 and their own bat as well. It's this trend of bad shots. I feel like this. I mean, OPUR has one as well, but APAC really likes those.
Dongalord especially really likes the bat chat. He's not exclusively a bat chat player, but I think if you would look at the vast majority of games he played in ANZPL, you would find that he was in a bat chat or something similar. It was just pretty much like bat chat or CS63 for the most part, if I'm remembering rightly. And he would be the natural fit to sort of be in a bat chat. If we were to see a double bat chat set up from Rejects, which I'd be surprised by, maybe it would be Madhouse to take that second bat chat. And what I will just say here as well is that the graphic is the wrong way around for those of you playing along at home. It is Rejects that is starting on the defense, OPUR on the attack.
Yeah, so the colors are a bit switched. Hopefully we can get that fixed at some point. But it's an interesting opening here from OPUR. Unlike W, they have just started really, really slow. OPUR, like really, really, really slow. Just going towards the forest, checking if there's any aggression there from Rejects whatsoever, and there wasn't. Rejects in return half pushed themselves onto the E2 area, a little bit more forward. But now you can see OPUR just starting to rotate, and this is one of the ways to play Muro. You can't be too complacent though, because once you start getting complacent, you lose on time. And I think everything looks good now though in terms of colors.
Yep. Yep. I'm happy with that. Looks good to me. Rejects on the defense. OPUR on the attack. I don't half mind this initial setup though for Rejects. I always sort of find Muro is one of those maps where if you're not playing quickly on the attack initially, you can lose a little bit of pretty important map control. So I'm wondering what OPUR is going to actually do with this. Do they want to try to take control of the town and maybe dig out those tanks on the 1-2 that are sitting on the 1 flag here for the Rejects, or are they going to try to push down that 1-2 line? It's maybe going to be the 4-3 split actually from OPUR.
They're just taking really slow control here. You'll see them push back up on 1-2 line now. With those tanks like Ketsa and Tsek, and they'll try and re-establish E1, right, where we saw JS in the last game, and they're trying to start to put some bit of a chokehold here on Rejects. They do have Dark Knight and Razor committed further, but that area that they're in is not that great to play from. It doesn't really give you much maneuverability or flexibility. Even you can just kind of sit there, especially the D5 counter the peak.
That may not have been the wisest of crosses from Madhouse. He hasn't even actually managed to fully get across yet. And I mean, down to 900 HP is a pretty hefty loss for one of your Super Conks. 500 now as well. It's a lot of bleed coming through here for Rejects. And it's also a position that Madhouse is just not going to be able to get out of. So he's kind of just hoping at this point that OPUR is going to bounce their shots, but I mean, inevitably, someone's just going to shoot a HE shell at him and he's going to die.
Even the bad shot on the offside, Piotrix will find an angle at some point on him. It's actually Tsek to close it down. Good shooting there. It's probably that high explosive shell you talked about. And yeah, for Redirect, that's a disaster, right? Losing that S-Conk, especially because it's the only tank on the 1 line that they have. That sort of crossfire that they're losing out on now. Piotrix does get spotted out, but I don't think they're going to be able to do anything against that. It's Donger there now. In a curious position. Is negative style Deceit? It does seem that way.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, he hasn't moved out of spawn, has he? So,
unless he's pretending AFK, you know.
I mean, I like your optimism. It's a great strategy from Rejects if it is. I think it's Galaxy Brain. We'll get to see how it turns out in just a sec. But I guess, yeah, you're right. If to make matters worse, if you're already down a tank, now you're debatably down 2 tanks. Not the ideal start to the series at all for Rejects. But OPUR, it does give them a nice way to sort of ease into things. A nice sort of warm-up game, really. That's, I think, what you have to take this as at this point.
A rough warm-up. It's like a warm-up where you're sore for a few days after, you know?
Yeah. Well, OPUR still taking things nice and slowly. You know, they're crossing the T's, dotting the I's. They're not getting too over-eager, and they're not going to make a mistake that could potentially bring Rejects back into this game. I mean, this one is pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered as far as I'm concerned, but let's see what Rejects can do as the brawl does start to ensue. It is Razor down to 815 HP. He is crushed by Pan's Fury in the Super Conk. Dark Knight will be soon to follow. He's in the middle of so many tanks. He's already raising his donger, and there's really not much that he's going to be able to do about it. At this point, I think Rejects have more or less just decided what their fate is going to be. They're resigned to it, and they're just going to give this one up.
It's a rough start, though, for Rejects here. Yeah, but that position from Madhouse, not sure why he tried to cross back over. We can all agree that that was not the play. But even then, though, even if he doesn't cross back over, he really would get surrounded slowly. And that's the issue with this passive defense, right? Where you just sit back like Rejects did. Because of the new Moravanka ever since the rework, when you do that and you see a team play like OPUR, they go slow and methodical, but they take the K line away from you, and they start taking back 1-2 line. And you can see Rejects tanks, they didn't really have anywhere to go. There's just too many layers of crossfire. Like, you can't play anything. You can't play on top of the ridge because you're getting shot from the 1 line or from the K line, and it's just slowly puts you in a position where you're going to get repushed on the 2 tanks that are in the E line, which we saw later after Madhouse died. But even if Madhouse is alive, they're not going to stop this repush anymore.
Yeah. Look, I mean, is there really much to say about it? I think at this point, if I'm in the rejects camp, I'm kind of saying, yeah, we kind of got trounced, but like we didn't even really get the opportunity to play that one out as we probably would have liked to have. So let's just completely forget about that one. And similarly, on the behalf of OPUR, I think they have to look at that and say, that wasn't really a representation of how these games are going to play out. It might, I would like to hope it won't be that easy. 2 tanks do 0 damage, right? Has APAC forgotten that we're not playing 5v5 anymore? Like we're actually playing 7v7, guys, right? There's no world where 2 tanks should have 0 damage. So, like I don't know what to say about it. It's an unfortunate situation, obviously, for rejects, but hey, you're down 1-0. Hopefully you can find a way to bounce back.
Let's just say that the saving grace here is that they were defending, which is the less favorite side. At least they get to attack after this. I mean, that is like the one positive note that I take away from that. Defense is less favored on Moro. It is just statistically the case. There's no really arguing about it. That is the one thing that they have going for them. But also the only thing. That was a rough round. Because, like, I think even if negative is in the game there, I don't know how much difference it would make.
We just for the sake of our little bet, like, can we just say that one doesn't count?
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like,
if it's 4-1,
if it's a 4-1,
sure. If it's a 4,
I still get my dinner.
That's not a problem. If it's 4-1, you still get. That's all good. We'll just one for free. The warm up.
You're a nice and charitable guy, man. Like that's what I like about you.
I just want to take you out for dinner. That's the only thing. It's just not looking very likely.
Yeah, we'll have to make it happen at one point. Either way, look, I think, just mental reset, really. That's where we're at this point. I think for rejects, you got to go back and look at that and say, okay, well, do we need to get a sub, right? Is he just donezo? Like, is his internet disconnected or is his power out or something like that? Obviously, these things happen. That's the first port of call. So if Dark Knight needs to be replaced, who is going to replace him? Just having a little bit of a look across the rest of their roster. They do have a couple of subs in there. A few of the members with experience as well. Zanon wasn't in that game. He's on the roster still as well. I think was Raz. Do you remember if Raspberry was in that first game? I don't think Raspberry was in there either.
I can check for you. I'm willing to check. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean.
Raz. No.
Raspberry.
No.
Yeah, so it was Raspberry and Zanon that were missing, I think, if I'm remembering rightly. So look, either of those guys, they should be able to slot in pretty comfortably. They've both had some experience in competitive formats lately. Raspberry in particular, he was on what was the second place team in the most recent season of ANZPL. So he's definitely someone that sort of knows his way around these competitive formats. Again, we'll continue to bring up that discussion that 5v5 and 7v7 are different. But like, I don't think that they're markedly different, and kind of looking at the way that the games are playing out, they're not, obviously there's an extra couple of tanks involved, but the way that the game flows, the way that the game plays, the focal points on the map and stuff like that, it's not a massive shift up that if you're someone that has a bit of experience already playing 5v5, it should be a little bit of a learning curve, but a natural transition, I'll say.
It's actually Giga Brain from Rejects, if you think about it. They're so used to 5v5 that they told Madhouse that he can just die and then negative style just doesn't need to load in, so that they play with 5, which is really...
They play 5v5.
Well, I mean, I don't think OPUR really understood the deal behind the 5v5 because they really used all 7, but that's just OPUR being bad. I think that's just
these exactly, toxic EU players, man. Like every EU player I meet, they talk down on APAC. You're the same, man. Like, can't you? They had a deal clearly. Like, I just don't understand.
I didn't predict 4-0 in the first game though.
Well, is this because Australia beat France in the Women's World Cup tonight? Is that what it is?
Did they?
I don't even. Yeah, they did.
But France. I mean, the more France loses, the better. I mean, I have had to deal with Insane for quite a while.
That's facts. Yeah, we can always root for the underdog at least. As far as what would we like to see changed up, again, I don't know if there's too much.
We could start
really
with 7 players for rejects. That would be the first start.
That's true.
And then keeping 7 alive for a while would also be great. I think if we work on those 2 points, we're already off to a good start.
Well, yeah, for sure. I don't know, like, what in that position, is Madhouse the one making that individual move, or is he being told to make that move?
For rejects? You know?
It would be CJ would be the caller.
I mean, maybe he got told, but I think that position in general, like, you can, even if he was already there, pushed up with HP, it's a similar story. The bad shots and tanks from the E line will find angles. Once they close up to the church, they will start finding angles on him, and there's no way for him to watch left and right because it's a super conqueror. Side third becomes exposed, so
Yeah.
he would always be in trouble. So if he's there full HP and he starts getting shot at and he runs away, I think he dies or goes towards the one shot as well. So I think that's just an oversight, no matter what. Like, sure, it might be
Yep.
an individual error, push him back up, but I think even if he doesn't, those two tanks that were committed forward, they would be isolated then. So it's a trade off in any sort of situation.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess that's what this game is really all about, right? It's the push and pull around the map and finding the ideal setups. And maybe it's a bit of an experience thing. And Rejects, clearly didn't have the experience on the defensive side there of Muro, but down a player as well doesn't help. See how things go as we do move into the second round of Muro here. And the silver lining, at least for Rejects, is that they are moving on to the attacking side of Muro, and so that might be at least beneficial for them.
They still have to make that work, though, at the same time.
Yep, for sure.
I believe in them, right? I believe in it. I never, like, I don't want to be like doomsday predictor. In the beginning of the game, is that
you did predict a 4-0.
Yeah, so. I know, but I think it will be a 4-0, but I don't want it to be a 4-0. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like I hate it when teams are unable to win, and not like unable, but when they don't win a round, because it doesn't feel good as a team, and of course they deserve to be here. You know what I mean? So it's not what these lineups though. Holy.
Oh, I feel like we're almost back to WGL at this point. We've got triple bat chat for OPUR. I mean, that's a real throwback. Double bat chat for Rejects as well. Double VZ55. They love the VZ55 down under, I'll say that much. Donglord and CJ in the bat chats. I mean, geez, this is pretty much a full send roster, is it not, from Rejects? Like, you have to take one really good fight, hope to blow up a couple of tanks, and if it doesn't work, then you're done.
They do have that advantage though, with the double VZ. Like, this lineup from OPUR, it's one that can explode really quickly. That triple bat, we've seen it in the previous matchup. If that bat gets caught out, you know what happens to it. It just explodes. It doesn't really survive. And I like this from Rejects immediately putting up the aggression, Donger and CJ straight onto the cap, followed up by the VZ55s from Rejects, and then the rest of the tanks close by. E5 pushing up, Escon covering the back, and the Mouse just holding off the 5 line. But OPUR already into the forest.
Oh, man. Well, you can see exactly what the strategy is here for Rejects. It's get straight on that cap and hope for the best, right? They're essentially going to try to pull some tanks in here for the reset and try to blow them up. I'm not sure how easy that's going to be when it's going to be Super Kongs playing hold down, trying to look for that reset. But here we go. 60 TP of Orchek going to be trying to go around that corner. Cops a shot from the E5. And off to the races for Rejects. So far, the trades are not looking very good at all, but Orchek now starting to eat a fair bit of damage. You've got to be really careful with these shots in the autoloader, but even then, trading 1-for-1 when you're the team with the extra autoloader on the field is not going to be a great feeling. Razor around the back.
The Mouse in the meantime, though, on the offside of your screen, Dark Knight is going to fall to that triple bat shot pressure from OPUR, coming in, swinging, and killing the Mouse. And like you said, yeah, that first initial engagement there from Rejects, it didn't really go well. CJ is leading the charge. You don't want the bat shot to be the first one around the corner, right? At least I wouldn't think so.
Nope.
He got tracked immediately by the 60 TP, and they never let him get out of the track. And then he died. I don't think he even did a single shot of damage, maybe one. And that is just really bad for Rejects, because you want that clip potential from that bat shot to come into effect. It could be great here to clip out T-Sec, for example, but it didn't have that, and Donger was just kind of by himself. I mean, he didn't make the push to kill the 60 TP, but losing 2 bat shots for 1. We saw what happened in the match between W and Bricked. It's never the trade you want.
Yeah, absolutely not. Razor, at the very least, will be able to get the better of T-Sec, so... I mean, yeah. I want to say HP's close. I want to say it's winnable here for APAC, but I think we all know better. Let's say in the bat chat, moving his way forward, and once he's off reload, once he's in striking distance, Razor is more or less a dead man.
I mean,
would
there's still
have to say.
some room for potential here, but Razor needs some help. He needs a teammate to come in and help him out here.
No one's there.
Yeah, I mean, they have bad shot of Donger, but he's on a one shot. And Panzer Fury and the S-Wing is always going to be winning this fight against C5. Nice shot there from Razor down towards Panzer Fury. I like to see it. Good stuff from him, at the very least. Not just giving up for free. Second one, though, not that great. He's now down towards the one shot. But now you have that triple bad shot from OPUR, though. Even though the HP is kind of close, it's all on Madhouse.
Yeah, and that's not ideal, right? The Super Conk is not exactly the kind of tank that is going to be able to clutch this game out. I mean, quite frankly, I'm not sure that any tank really could in a 4-on-1, which is essentially what this one is, because Dongalord, he's a one-shot. Piotrek still does have one shot in that bat chat, and with a decent roll, it would be enough to finish Dongalord off. Here we go. Let's see what Dongalord's going to be able to do. Okay. The ram damage, not even going to be required, and obviously, bat chat on bat chat violence, it's going to be OPUR up 2-0 at the end of Murovanka. Unfortunate circumstances for rejects in the first round, but I think you can just say pretty much across the board they were outclassed there in round 2.
Yeah, I think there was room for them to play in that round if they got a good engagement on that 60p. CJ should never be leading the charge in the bat. You want one of the VZs to be the first one because really it's just a two-shot clip and dump. You want one of those to lead the charge. He was the one leading it, and he does get, what is it, 2 shots off, but alter the data across the board for OPUR. Damage relatively easily spread, except for Panzer Fury having a good time. And Orchek, of course, at 60p goes for the reset. That's what he's supposed to do. 2 shots there for CJ.
Yeah, 2 shots in a bat chat isn't really enough, right? Like, you're not, what's the word? You're not getting your value out of that tank. You're not justifying why you're taking a bat chat if you're only going to get 2 shots out of it. It's unfortunately, not providing its worth. Across the board, some pretty rough looking damage numbers there. Razor nearly 5k in the E5 is not too bad, but that is Muro done and dusted. Now, I guess you can obviously make the argument that Muro was OPUR's map pick, so there is greener pastures ahead in theory for rejects. I think you can always mentally wrangle with the fact that you go down 0-2 on your opponent's map pick, because in theory that's kind of how it's supposed to go. They win 2-0 on their map pick. We win 2-0 on our map pick. You're not picking a map if you don't think you can 2-0 on it. So rejects, they've gone for Tundra. We'll hope to see them have a little bit of a better time on Tundra than what they did against Dopamine, where they did go down 0-2. But you'd think that they would have been able to get a bit of a look back at that game and see where some of the holes in the defense maybe were, and they can sort of use that as an opportunity to learn from, and maybe, dare I say, avoid the 4-0, because at the moment it's not really looking like a close matchup.
Yeah, it's this. You want to change the deal again if it's 4-2, or we're gonna give up on it now?
I mean, yeah, if you're down, I'm down.
Yeah, but the question is how much do we keep moving the goalposts, though? Because at some point you're running out of rounds. That's the bigger issue.
Right. Well, I mean, is there a deal if it's 0-4? Like, are we still on at that point?
Nah. I don't think so.
Yeah. Well,
and then maybe just a little too far.
I tell you what, maybe the high five's on offer. That's maybe what we have to start focusing on at this point. But
it's coming ever closer.
Yeah, Tundra. Hey, yeah.
Is there Tundra in 5v5? Was there?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, it wasn't initially in the map pool, but there was a few. It felt like after a couple of seasons, there was a map change every now and then. Like Sand River got taken out. Oh, sorry, not Sand River. Steps got taken out. Sand River was brought in, and then Tundra was brought in for mines, I think. So we sort of changed the map pool around a little bit. But yeah, Tundra was in for I want to say 2-3 seasons. But it was still one of the fresher maps, I guess.
I'm be curious to see how they approach this in the 7v7. Otherwise, I mean, normally it's a 1-1 map, but from what I've seen so far, and as this man next to me would say, I'm an APAC hater, it's not looking like it's going to be a 1-1 map. I'm worried for rejects. I really...
Me too.
I really am.
Me too. I mean, look, like I said, from the matches that I've watched, and I wonder if you agree with me so far based on what you've seen, I thought Bricked kind of had a bit of a better setup. It seemed like they had a little bit more.
Yeah, Bricked looked like to be, on pace with W for quite a while. outside of Proco. Like Proco, not really, but
Yeah.
on the other two maps, I think they were pretty close to it.
Yeah, and I think it's look. It is, to be fair, probably a little bit harsh to be judging rejects because, like, we've seen one game, really. Like the first, I'm prepared to kind of write off the first game of Muro. Like they had a DC, whatever. But even second round, not ideal. So let's just say we're judging them based on seeing one game so far in this series. I did actually watch their game earlier on today, and it took them a little while to kind of get into the series. So maybe they're just slow starters. Maybe that's a storyline that we can go with and sort of try to drum up a bit of hope here for the APAC roster. But yeah, look, Tundra, their map pick, they're going to have to essentially 2-0 this. Like I think if you don't 2-0 this, like the series is probably a little bit too far gone at that point.
Like I said, recovering from a 3-0 is not it, and the tiebreaker is not enough for rejects anyways. They like.
No. I mean, I think mathematically
there's some way, but realistically,
there would be if they would
in
win
tiebreaker to get
if they would win
points.
tiebreaker and then. So if rejects won tiebreaker and OPUR lost to dopamine,
yeah, but
they
OPUR would then
for
have to lose to dopamine without a tiebreaker altogether already.
No, because you only get 1 point for a tiebreaker.
Yeah, but
so regardardless of whether it's tiebreaker or not.
True. But that is counting
So,
on.
But in theory, yeah,
the odds.
Yeah. Like I know what you're saying. You know what I'm saying. Everyone knows what we're saying. Whatever. Let's get into it. We'll see how things go here as we move into Tundra. And once again, like I said, the VZ55 is coming out in force. And E5 there for Madhouse. We've got a bunch of 60 TPs out for OPUR, IS7. And yeah, it's pretty much 60 TPs to round things out for rejects. So yeah, very much that sort of same mentality actually from both teams coming through. Some minor changes, but for the most part, like an IS7 and E5, I think semi-interchangeable in terms of roles that they can fill in these teams.
Yeah, the VCs, you need to get a good engagement though. You want to get that clips out and actually connect your shots. So for OPUR, getting those to work is going to be the interesting factor because we don't really see those though. Usually we do just see the IS7 because it bounces just more, has more HP. The VZ, lack of DPM. But I like the lineup from Rejects, so it's pretty normal. I don't know what's happening in A1 though.
Yeah, I've not seen this before, so I can't really tell you either. But it has to be just some kind of classic bait and switch setup, right? They just want to hide the location of those VZ55s and try to use them as like a bait, right? Or use the E5 rather as a bait and have the VZ55s collapse upon whoever tries to push in there, I suppose, is the idea behind this setup. Do they have an angle onto the one flag from there?
No, it is hoping that
Surely
the
not.
5 gets pushed, I guess, or I'm not sure.
That's what I'm assuming. That is what I'm assuming.
Like but then why are they not closer to the corner though? Why are they specifically here? Maybe so they'd never get spotted for sure. We'll have to see if this works out,
Yeah. I don't mind seeing something a little bit unorthodox. I think if you go into this matchup and you say, well, we're going to play super standard, they're going to play super standard, they probably play standard better than we do, in theory. So maybe we try to change things up. Ketsai, in that CCTP, already suffering a fairly hefty loss at the hands of CJ and Madhouse.
Yeah, CJ there with a good shot though. He has to be careful because that walk position is counterable, but I don't think OPUR is going to be going for it right now. If you take the area of G6, you can actually shoot him. But they don't really have a gun that's good enough or consistent enough at doing that because VZs, they need to reload. Orchek is looking though for the angle. Panzer Fury is going to pressure the A-line as well. CJ now running, takes one, takes two. Piltig's there coming in with a shot as well. He gives one back to Orchek, and that actually went a lot better than I expected that would go.
Yeah, I think it could have gone a lot worse, is probably the big takeaway there. He gets out with half his HP, and he was able to at least trade Semi effectively, especially if you take into account the damage that he did earlier on in the piece. Now here comes the push on the northern side of the map. So IS7 CCTP starting to head towards that A8 position where the E5 of Madhouse is holed up. And this is maybe where we get to see the idea behind the double VZ55 setup for rejects, because they're still holding them in the back pocket. The game is playing out. There's a lot of trading going on. They have not shown their faces just yet. So what are they going to do?
It's a good question. I mean, so far, for rejects, it's great. They might actually push the E5 at some point. But the E5 is getting shot at from the back lines, from the VZs there. Piotrix and Rishak trying to connect that, but VZ on range, it's not really known for its accuracy, so he's going to be fine there. DJ now coming closer with his 60p. Panzer Fury might even start the cap there. And at what point do they use this A1 VZ trap to do something?
I'm still waiting for it, man. Like, I think you've got to be pulling the trigger shortly. I don't know that OPUR is going to continue to push any further forward for the kill onto the E5. Like, if that's what they're waiting for, is that even going to actually eventuate?
I mean, Zanen gets spotted.
Or do we continue to see the... Yeah, true. So, I mean, do they have an angle onto the one flag, I guess, is the only question you have to ask then. But, I mean, no resets coming through just yet. Maybe some of that early damage onto Ketsai was from the VZ55s, but here they pull the trigger. But OPUR already knew where those VZ55s were, and they're obviously, as you could see, very well set up to deal with it. Good shots on the cross. Dark Knight down to about half HP. Zanen cops another one as well. I have to say, I don't think that this setup has worked out very well. It certainly hasn't worked the way that Rejects would have hoped it would. Dark Knight start to put his shots into that 60 TP, but they are really struggling to even finish Ketsai off at this point.
And the biggest issue is that both Dark Knight and Zanen actually ended up missing a shot on Ketsai, which means that he gets to live and do another shot on Madhouse, dropping him to a one-shot. And now you can see the VZs trying to go into a Panzer Fury, but for Rejects, they get Ketsai out of the game, but they're left with nothing again. They have 4 tanks left standing, of which one is a one-shot being Madhouse, and OPUR with double their HP and plenty of extra guns as well to be able to close this one out. Like, the A1 trap, it had something on paper, but it even got spotted early, and then when they left, they were 100% spotted, got punished along the way, so did Donger, and for Rejects, it's looking rather rough at this moment in time.
Yeah, definitely just outclassed across the board, right? You can see when those initial trades are happening, sooner or later, OPUR almost always pull ahead. It's not really ever felt like Rejects in this series so far have been in a winnable position, right? It's a different ball game to what we were talking about in that previous matchup, where Brick, at least, they won 2 rounds. Third round it looked like they were actually ahead or they had a chance of winning. But so far, you can't even really say anything to the positive for Rejects in this matchup. OPUR have utterly dominated them, and that is a 3-0 scoreline. And I think that was very much in line with expectations, right? So you're pretty much on for the 4-0 at this point.
Yeah, it's rough for Rejects. It's really, really rough for them. OPUR is also just a really good team. You can see that they're not... I think it's a sign of OPUR here is they're not trolling Rejects. They're really just taking everything slow and steady, playing it as they normally would, and not allowing them in the game. Sometimes you see some teams, if they play against a lesser team in their eyes, take it less serious and start making mistakes, which brings the claim closer. But I think OPUR really here is, they mean business.
Yeah, I think that's a good mentality to have, right? You play the way you practice, and if they are considering this almost like a practice game in a way, right? Like this is like a warm-up game for them going into, in theory, a more difficult game later on today and then potentially tomorrow even as well. And they consider themselves to be the team that should be going to China to play a WCI, then they should be taking this exactly as they should be in any other game. Take this as an opportunity to continue to lock down the comms, lock down the setups. If anyone's making a mistake, you can maybe not get punished for it in this matchup and fix it for the next matchup where you potentially could get punished for it. So I like the mentality that they come into it with. And if they, like I said earlier, cross the T's, dot the I's, make sure they're 100%ing everything, then that stands them in a good position going into future matches for sure.
The less you play, the less you have to show as well. And the more time you have to prepare for later. And I think for a tournament with this importance, you can use all the time that you get to make sure that you can look to the future and get ready for what are going to be some hard matches still, because only one team makes it. There's no prizes for anybody else.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And well, I mean, at the moment, it's definitely looking very solid for OPUR. Considering Dopamine as well, when they played against Rejects, did drop a couple of rounds. This is quite a decisive.
I didn't get to see those games. It was really late at night.
Yeah, I was watching them. And like again, like what I said, it sort of felt like maybe Rejects didn't quite have as much as Brick did, just in terms of cohesion and setups and calling, and I just think that they didn't look quite as polished necessarily. And I mean, to be fair, Dopamine, there was some holes, I'll say. So I think if I'm looking at this next matchup that OPUR is going to play, which would be OPUR versus Dopamine, this is like a gauntlet being thrown down by OPUR and saying, look, we, as in theory, 4-0'd Rejects. You guys only 4-2'd them. Like, we're the better team. We're going to come in and maybe even 4-0 you as well. Like that's the kind of vibes that I'm getting right now from OPUR at the moment. So first of all, obviously they have to finish this one off 4-0. And then we'll see. Then we'll start to talk. But the way that this game has been playing out so far, I couldn't really predict anything but a 4-0 at this point.
Yeah. Again, though, Tundra attack a favorite side, so they have something going for them. We gotta extend a lifeline, you know? Show them something,
Sure.
a life jacket, something to hold on to.
Yeah, but the waters are pretty treacherous at the moment, so I'm not sure that a life jacket's going to be enough. They might need a boat or something like that. Anyway, let's see what happens. Tundra could be the final round we get to see Rejects playing here in the WCI Wildcard Tournament, which would also mark the exit of both the APAC teams, unfortunately.
Yeah. Which means we gotta bring Kihan back.
I mean, look, it's 12:30 in the morning for me. Time for bed, you know.
Oh, true.
That's fine.
Yeah, I remember last time, we were together, you were still young. Now, not quite.
I'm an old man at this point, mate.
True. We're all getting old. But OPUR, though, coming into Tundra with another interesting lineup. 60p, Mouse, Quad VZs, and a Minotauro.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It looks like it's going to be something pretty explosive, for lack of a better word, from OPUR. Pretty standard across the board, though, from Rejects. They've just gone for that pretty solid heavy tank lineup. 60 TPs, IS-7s, Super Kongs. They never really go astray on any of the maps in World of Tanks, to be fair, but especially on one that is such a sort of defilade heavy map like Tundra. And then, of course, you've got Dongalord in the CS63. He always likes to be in a medium tank, sort of floating around the map. So nice to have a little bit of mobility on your side, but looks to be a southern push from Rejects this time.
Yeah, immediately orientating themselves towards that south side of the map. There will be the double VZ, right? Fury and Rexar that are going to be able to hit shots on the crossing. How much they will do is a question. The Minnow should also get one shot realistically. And then will have to be some big rotations from OPUR after that, though.
Yeah. Rejects actually, when they were playing on the defense, suffered at the hands of a strategy similar to this one. So I wonder if they looked at that and said, you know what, maybe we'll try for a 2-flag attack. I think they opted for a 1-flag attack in their initial game against Dopamine. So a little bit of a change up in that respect. They have been spotted and they have not opted to cross onto the flag just yet, which is going to, I mean, that's going to give OPUR a bit of extra time to start rotating their tanks down. And I tell you what, trying to make a cross against multiple VZ55s, it ends up like this. Look at how much damage is being bled already. Not really much of a response from Rejects either. And in fact, they're not even interested in the cap. They're just going to try to push their way around, potentially to the 1 line.
They do have an issue with that 60 TP,
Rexar's...
though. Oof, Rexar takes 2. But the 60p of CJ, I mean, he's about to get bounced on by double VZ55 of T-Sec and Piotrix. And if he's not careful, he's going to get shot from behind as well. So, bit of an isolated position here. Not sure what he's supposed to do. Gets a big one on towards T-Sec, though. But here comes the clips already. No misses on this one. See the VZ burst coming out. Minus 1.9 on CJ. Not sure what they're trying to gain off of this position.
Yeah, I thought maybe the Super Conk there would be able to help him out, but obviously Madhouse is off in a different direction, and they may not have even walked, pushed their way up over that ridge enough for him to find an angle anyway. Next shot from the 60 TP does go astray, so that'll be the end of CJ. He's not done a whole lot there. And the repush on the other side of the map, that push and pull gameplay that we talk about, isn't quite going so well for Rejects. They're on top of Ketsai, but they're not being able to finish him off. They're barely doing any damage at all. It's Razor in the IS-7 that's decided, okay, well, if no one's going to do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to push. I'm going to be the first man in, but it's too little too late, unfortunately, at this point. And Well, Rejects, they do finish off Rexar. They will probably finish off Ketsai in short succession, but it's just not enough. The trade is nowhere near favorable.
They're again forced to react though. With CJ's position, they have to do something. Normally, you see teams start cap pressure then at that point, right? They will start putting pressure on base number 2 with his IS7s after taking the K line. But now, when CJ is that far alone and isolated in that position, you're forced to actually make a move, right? You cannot just lose one tank and do nothing with it. So they're forced to, again, react and be at OPUR's mercy. Not too sure what CJ was trying to achieve there. Would have been better off with his team with that cap pressure to force OPUR to come in and reset so they can do the initial damage and then make a move upon that. Not this way around where, again, they're forced to do an unfavorable push.
Yeah, not ideal at all. And it looks like you might be right in your prediction here. I don't see Cesium being able to clutch this one out. It is a 4-0 at the end of the day. OPUR, they just wipe the floor with Rejects and say goodbye to APAC for the WCI wildcard tournament. And they will not be making it to day 2. OPUR will be.
I got two
APAC will not
predictions
be.
right, by the way. I'm quite happy with myself.
Congratulations. I got 2 predictions wildly wrong. But
we saw that one coming.
I don't know if anyone... I mean, if we had a prediction for the predictions, I think I might have predicted correctly on the second prediction at least. So anyway, is what it is.
We'll just say that you entered the 4-0 for the wrong team.
Yeah. I mean, oh no, the graphics guys, they just got it wrong, man. Like I chose OPUR like all along. But hey, let's look at the damage charts here. Minotauro, pretty good choice. Does 4k damage. VZ55s, you'd expect them to be putting the vast majority in there as well. And so pretty good across the board. Very, very solid stuff in the end there from OPUR. Effort by committee really is the way I'd put that.
Yeah, you can see there CJ on the bottom of the list. I mean, kind of what you expect from an isolated 60 DP. Doesn't have great DPM and needs time to work that big alpha gun. And sure, it has a lot of HP, but if you're alone against multiple opponents, you're not going to last for a long time. You can see that come into effect there. And sadly for Rejects, the last hope for the APAC region, they will not be heading to China.
Yeah. Look, I don't know that anyone's super surprised by that. There is still, of course, Mori-Chan, which is the team that did qualify through from APAC. Initially, they were actually a Japanese squad, at least a majority Japanese squad. So today we kind of had like 2 majority ANZ squads. But we'll see what Mori-Chan can do when we get to WCI. But for now, we have to continue on and check how the qualifiers are going to go. And of course, we do have to hear from our analysts as well, both coming through from EU. I'm sure they're happy with how that game played out.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. And Toxic, what a performance, what a dominant match it has been from OPUR, taking the victory 4-0 against this APAC team Rejects. And we have to say goodbye to them, just like we did with Bricked. We already know what teams are going to be moving forward to the playoff stage, the semifinals. Tomorrow is going to be 2 EU teams, 2 NA teams, 4-0. What do you think about this?
I mean, clearly their application to join the WCI tournament got rejected by none other than OPUR. We did kind of expect OPUR to win. Ducky and me even getting our predictions correct there. Elfish already said it himself. He just got screwed over by the graphics guy. They put in the score wrong, obviously. So we will be seeing the North American and the European teams battling it out not only today in the upcoming 2 matches, but also tomorrow during the playoff stage in the best of night format.
So I'm not sure if we're gonna see like the greatest tactics from this team now. I mean, it comes down to sitting. I don't think W wants to end up against OPUR because they probably, or maybe they actually want to take their revenge straight. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to beat every teams to get to the finals, and win it. There are no extra rewards. This is just one spot, one team getting to the WCI with this wildcard tournament. So I'm not sure how it's going to be played out. I'm pretty much certain that the NA teams really want to take the victory. They are always very keen to play against EU teams and show that NA can actually compete and even beat them. And you're going to see that shortly. But before that, Toxic, we should probably take a look at the replays to see exactly what happened between OPUR and Rejects as we're starting on Murovanka with Rejects on the defense and OPUR on the attack.
Yeah, this one was a bit unfortunate. As far as I remember, the Rejects had a bit of connection issues here. However, Madhouse also throwing away quite some HPs at the start there doesn't really help their case. I think it was 2 players in the end even having 0 damage out of the team, so they're used to a 5v5 format, as was highlighted earlier, so maybe they just wanted to play 5 vs 5 here as well, but OPUR said no, we are playing with 7.
I mean, OPUR, very comfortable on their attack. Pretty easy considering the fact that one of the enemy tank was just sitting AFK at this point because he had to disconnect. But we also have to mention that even though that was the case, their attack was very interesting, very methodical. They took their time, took the full map control, completely surrounded rejects. And I personally have doubts that even if that I7 would have been in the game, it would have changed a thing.
Yeah, I mean, OPUR just really didn't want to drop around here, because why would they want to show more strats than they have to? They really do want to keep those for the... It might sound toxic to say, but for the more important matches later on during the playoffs. They respected rejects here, played very slow always, kind of scouted out what they were doing, and then just took the match to the rejects. And I mean, they finished it off in a beautiful fashion, and it's pretty much what we expect from OPUR.
To be fair, this one was pretty close between those two teams. Even though OPUR, you felt like they had controlled the entire time, with the aggressive defense taking up control, forcing rejects to push out around that base 1. Pretty convincing lead on Morvanka to start with 2-0. And I'm very keen to see them play later on against the NA team, but back on those replays, we were next on Tundra, and you could see that rejects, they went for a repush because once again OPUR took a lot of map control and was starting to take key positions surrounding them, but it didn't go well because the Polish team was very well set up for it.
I mean, rejects just initially not setting up really well. I don't know if they have this map in their map pool, but usually you don't want to give up like the F2 position for free, because as you saw, the VZs from OPUR just took those positions and created a crossfire basically everywhere on the map they wanted to go, which just led to disaster for rejects, and OPUR just then basically awaiting the repush, because hey, they have the positions already to deal the damage over time. Rejects is the one that has to make a move, and if they don't, they will lose. They tried the desperation push over the A line, but they got caught. They got completely punished for it. Great stuff from OPUR.
I'm interested about this one though, because OPUR, they're 3-0 up, and you could expect them to go for a standard basic defense like we have seen even in the past with 7 tournament, but instead they're going for something aggressive. This is unusual. 4 VZ55 actually going aggressive, trying to surround once again rejects, and rejects again out of answers, trying to go for this desperate 2-3 line repush. Yes, they're gonna take Ketsai down. Yes, it's a good overmatch, but in return they're 3k HP down. They don't have any positions, they don't have any map control. The Mino is still alive, and good stuff from the side of OPUR. Honestly, a very good performance from their side to start with.
I mean, from rejects, they might get the position here, they might get Ketsai, but they just bled too much for it. OPUR was ready for that repush, so great stuff from them. Just once again predicting what rejects will throw at them, and then also being able to handle it as well. This is what we expected from the EU teams. W did drop 2 rounds, but OPUR really showing that the EU teams are not